Hey mathematics learners, welcome to Distance Learning with Lee, where I make learning mathematics super easy. So on today's video tutorial, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to be looking at BMI. So what is BMI? Why do we calculate a person's BMI? Okay, what does that number actually tell us about a person's weight status? Okay, that is what we're going to be looking at in today's video tutorial. Okay, in some instances you just have to calculate a person's BMI, okay, given a particular formula. How do we calculate it? In some instances, right, you are given a person's BMI, you're given a person's weight, and you need to determine that person's height. What do you need to do? And in some instances, right, you're given a person's height, you're given a person's BMI, and you need to calculate a person's weight. What do you need to do? So that's basically what we're going to be looking at on this part of the video tutorial. And in the next part, right, we're going to be looking at, how we calculate a person's BMI if you're given a particular graph that you need to work with. Okay, so we're going to be using this graph to help us calculate a person's BMI and then use that BMI to determine a person's weight status, right, and also answer a couple of questions that are given to us here. All right, so please make sure that you watch this entire video tutorial. It's going to be part 1 and part 2, but I'm just going to upload it all in one day, so please make sure that you watch both these video tutorials. They are really going to help you guys when it comes to understanding BMI a bit better. All right, so before we get started with today's video tutorial, ladies and gentlemen, please make sure that you are subscribed to the channel. Please make sure that you click on that notification bell so that you get notified every single time I upload a video tutorial. And also please don't forget to share all these video tutorials with your friends, with your cousins, right? Share them with everyone that is doing mathematical literacy. They will really help, guys. I promise you, they really do help. All right, so without any further ado, let's get started with today's video tutorial. So what is BMI? So BMI stands for Body Mass Index. It is a number that is calculated from an adult's weight and height, and it is expressed in units of kilograms per meter squared. So when we're calculating a person's BMI, we're just trying to determine a number, right? And that number is expressed in the units of kilograms per meter squared, and we use that number, okay, to help us determine a person's weight status. So what do I mean by weight status? Okay, we can use a person's BMI to help us determine if a person has a normal weight, if a person is overweight, if a person is underweight, and if a person is obese, right? So you calculate a person's BMI to basically, check to see, are you healthy? Are you living a healthy lifestyle? Must you make changes, in terms of your lifestyle? Maybe you need to cut down on that on those rationing chips, okay, type of situation. Okay, so a BMI, when you calculate a person's BMI, we are able to basically determine a person's weight status. Okay, if a person has a normal weight, if you're a bit underweight, maybe you need to eat more. Okay, if you're overweight, maybe you need to do, make a bit of some changes, when it comes to your diet. Maybe you need to exercise more, right? Or if you're obese. Okay, so that's basically the significance of us calculating a person's BMI. So how do we calculate BMI? So I'm just going to move this a bit down so that we just get into the nitty-gritties, right? How do we calculate a person's BMI? So if you want to calculate a person's BMI, okay, to calculate BMI, okay, BMI is equal to a person's weight, okay, divided by a person's height, all squared. Okay, so now we need to be very careful. Okay, what are the units, okay, that we use when you're calculating a person's BMI? Okay, so a person's weight needs to be in kilograms and their height needs to be in meters, right? And that is all squared, right? So that is how we calculate BMI. Also, another way that you can maybe look at this formula to just help you, right, in situations where not just calculating BMI, but maybe you're calculating weight or you may be calculating height, you can just use this triangle to help you because they will definitely give you this formula. Okay, right? But sometimes you need to be able to, manipulate this formula, change or move certain values around, okay, to calculate whatever it is that you're required to calculate. So what do you need to do if you're given that situation, right? You can use this triangle. I'm sure you've seen this triangle, when you're calculating average speed, distance, time, okay, it works exact same way. So I'm just gonna just draw this quick triangle for you guys, okay? So what does this mean? So we've got weight divided by your height all squared. So right there, this is your weight, okay, divided by height all squared, right? And then here, right, that is just going to be BMI, right? So what does this mean? Let's say, for example, you have to calculate a person's BMI, right? So you're given a person's weight and you're given a person's height. What do? Simple. You're just going to say weight divided by the height all squared. Okay, so if it's value at the top, value at the bottom, we are dividing. Okay, then if it's values or, next to each other, we are multiplying. Okay, so that's basically what you have to do there. If you're calculating BMI, it's just weight divided by height squared. If you're calculating, maybe they want you to determine a person's weight, right? What do? It'll be BMI multiply by height. If you have to calculate a person's height, okay, it'll be weight divided by BMI, and then we have to do something else to solve for that height. So please make sure that you pay attention so that you see what we need to do. Okay, let's start off with question number 1. Okay, let's put this triangle to practice. Right, cool. Let's look at the first question. It says calculate a person's BMI given the person's weight in kg and the person's height, right, in meters. Also, something that I just forgot to mention here, right, the units for BMI. When you're calculating a person's BMI, right, the weight needs to be in kilograms. The height needs to be in meters, okay? Then the units for BMI is kilograms per meter squared, okay? Makes sense, okay? Because it's kilograms per meters squared, right? So let me just put that there so that it doesn't, it makes sense. Let me just do that. Height, it must be in meters all squared. Okay, so let's just put this to practice and see if we can basically apply this, right? This is just a nice and simple way for us to just know what we need to do. But if your understanding of mathematical concepts is very strong, you actually don't need this triangle, right? So I'm just using this triangle for learners where they, it gets a bit tough for them to, figure out, are they supposed to times? Are they supposed to divide, right? So we can just always make use of this triangles, right? So let's have a look at the first question, right? It says that, okay, calculate a person's BMI if we're given a person's weight and height, right? So if you're calculating BMI, okay, what do we know from this, triangle? We can see that if you're trying to calculate BMI, what does it say? It's weight divided by height all squared. So the solution for question number 1, BMI is equal to the weight divided by your height. Take note of this in meters all squared, right? So then let's just quickly substitute that. What is this person's weight? It is 70 kilograms divided by, what is this person's height? It is 1.7 meters all squared. Therefore, what is this person's BMI? It is 24.22145,329. What are the units? Kilograms per meter squared. Simple, right? So if a person has a weight of 70 kg and a height of 1.7 meters, then their BMI is 24.22145,329 kilograms per meter squared, right? And if you wanted to round this off to 2 decimal places, we can just say 24.22 kilograms per meter squared. Okay, that is the person's BMI. Nice and easy. Okay, so now what happens with question number 2? Okay, in question 2, it asks us to calculate a person's height. Okay, if the BMI is equal to 22.51 kilograms per meter squared and the height is equal to 52 kilograms. Okay, so I've just moved this question to the bottom here. So what do we need to do in this case, right? So in this case, ladies and gentlemen, you're trying to determine what a person's height. That's what we're looking for, that height there, all right? Okay, so write that down there. We're trying to calculate height. So remember, what have I written the height as? It's written as height all squared. So I'm going to write it like that. Height all squared, right? Because that is what we're looking for. We're trying to, calculate what is a person's height, right? So for us to determine a person's height, what do we need to do based on, our triangle here, right? It's saying that it needs to be the weight in kgs divided by BMI. Remember, value at the top and at the bottom just means that we need to divide. Okay, so then from here, height is going to be equal to the weight of a person in kg divided by the person's BMI. Okay, so then let's just quickly substitute. Remember, this is height squared. We still need to do something, okay? So please just pay attention there, right? So what's the weight? Just going to say the weight is 52 kg divided by, what is the BMI in this case? The BMI is 22.51 kilograms per meter squared, right? Okay, so then let's just simplify further. It's going to be 52 divided by 22.51. You'll get that, okay, this person's, remember, this is the height all squared. This is the height all squared, right? Therefore, it's going to be 2.31. It's 00. It's 84407. Okay, it's actually meters squared because you've got kilograms, okay, divided by kilograms per meter squared. So this is basically us saying it's kilograms multiplied by meter squared over kilograms. So kilograms cancel. You've got just units in meters squared, if you get my drift. Okay, so the units that we have now left, right, that haven't cancelled, it's meters squared, right? Then now remember, we are trying to calculate a person's height, not a person's height squared, right? So we still need to take it a step further. We want to isolate that height, okay? It mustn't have any, exponents there with it, okay? So what is it that we need to do, okay? What is the operation that we need to do to get rid of that squared there? You just need to square root the left hand side, square root the right hand side. When you square root, okay, it gets rid of that squared there. Okay, so therefore the height is equal to, you're just going to put the square root, it's 2.3100844407. Okay, that means that this person's height is actually 1.519896183. Because we've now square rooted, the right hand side, it's actually also canceling out that squared there. It's just meters there. Okay, right. So the inverse of, a squared, if you want to get rid of a squared, you need to square root. Okay, and that's how we basically get rid of that height, the squared there, from the height, because we just want the height to be on its own. So if a person's, BMI is 22.51 kilograms per meter squared and their weight is 52 kilograms, right? We can just use this triangle, remember? But from this triangle, you just need to, identify what it is that you're trying to solve for. We're trying to determine what is the height, right? But what's going to help us get to what is the height, we're obviously going to use that height squared is equal to your weight divided by BMI, right? Then weight divided by BMI, we substitute the values from there, and then from there, we can see that, okay, we're not trying to solve for height squared. We want to determine a person's height. Okay, so then we need to get rid of that 2. How do we get rid of the 2? You just need to square root the left hand side, what you do on the left hand side, you need to do on the right hand side, right? Okay, remember, when you're trying to get rid of certain things, like if you're trying to get rid of, a number, right, that is in front of, something that you're trying to solve for, right? If, for example, if it's maybe you're trying to solve for, maybe it's 7.83 is equal to 2 multiplied by height, né? So let's say in this case you're trying to solve for height, right? How would you isolate this height? Because you're multiplying, what's the inverse of multiplication? You divide by 2. Divide by 2. Okay, so in this case, right, because you're trying to solve for the height and we've got that squared there, okay, so the inverse of a squared, just square root, it's gonna get rid of that squared there. Okay, just something that you can just take note of, right, which is very important. If you are given a BMI question and they ask you to determine a person's height given their BMI as well as their weight. Okay, I hope that basically makes sense. Let's have a look at the last question. Okay, so question number 3 is saying that calculate a person's weight. If the height is equal to 1.55 meters and their BMI is equal to 25.39. Okay, so remember, guys, right, I'm going to do this again so that you guys see why I'm doing certain things, right? Remember, the formula for BMI, they're going to give you this formula is equal to the weight of a person divided by person's height, all squared, right? So I said that from this, equation that they can give you, right? In case you're asked to maybe determine a person's weight or determine a person's height, you can just quickly from this just draw a triangle, okay? From this triangle, weight at the top, height at the bottom. Literally like that. Weight at the top. Remember, height squared at the bottom. Height squared at the bottom. Then obviously, you need to put the BMI there, right? And then from there, from just using this, you know that value at the top, value at the bottom, you are dividing. Then values next to each other, we are multiplying. Easy. Then we can answer anything. Whether they ask you to calculate weight given BMI height, you can do it. Whether they ask you to calculate height given weight and BMI, you can do it. Whether they ask you to calculate BMI given height and weight, you can do it. Okay, it makes it easy for you to solve for whatever it is the question is asking you to solve for. Remember, we're trying to make maths easy, guys. All right? So from here, what are we being asked to do? So I'm just going to remove this. I was showing you again where I got this triangle, because I know, okay, someone is, probably confused. So how do you calculate a person's weight in this case? So in this case, we are trying to determine weight. That is what we want, right? That is our unknown. So I'm just going to highlight that. This is what we want, okay? We want the person's weight, that. So for us to calculate a person's weight, what do we need to do? Based on this triangle, right? It's just going to be weight is equal to BMI multiplied by height squared. Do you see? Multiplied by height all squared, right? And then from there, what is our BMI? They've given us our BMI is 25.39 kilograms per meter squared multiplied by what is our height? 1.55 meters all squared. Then what do we need to do? Literally, I'm just putting the units there, guys. Okay, it's the maths teacher in me that makes me want to put the units there. Okay, but even if you don't put the units there, it's fine. As long as you just remember that, the height, it must be in meters. The BMI, okay, it must be in kilograms per meter squared. Okay, as long as you've now, stuck to the units that you're supposed to use, then you know that your final answer, because it's weight, it needs to be kilograms. Okay, right, cool stuff. So let's just put this into your calculator, 25.39 multiplied by, open bracket, 1.55, close bracket, all squared. Remember, okay, it is height squared. So it's the height all squared. That's basically what I did there. And therefore, it's going to be 60.999475. Okay, remember, this is weight. So it's kilogram. All right. Okay, if you round it off to, maybe let's just make it, okay, if you actually round it off to a whole number, because if you round it off, you'll see that it's just 61 kg. Okay, so if a person has a weight of 1.55 meters and a BMI of 25.39 kilograms per meter squared, then their weight is 61 kilograms. All right, so I hope you enjoyed this, young, nice introductory video on what is BMI? What does BMI stand for? Body mass index. Why do we calculate a person's BMI? To determine a person's weight status. Is a person underweight, overweight, obese, normal weight? That's why we calculate BMI, right? If you're given a question to calculate BMI, how do you calculate BMI? It's weight divided by height squared. What are the units that we use when we're calculating BMI? Weight, it's in kilograms. Height, it's in meters. BMI, kilograms per meter squared. What do we need to do if you're not asked to calculate the BMI, but you're asked to calculate the weight? Okay, what do we need to do? How do we need to manipulate, this given equation, right? We can use the triangle, okay? I'm sure you've seen that triangle when you're working with average speed, distance over time, how we create that triangle to help us solve for whatever unknown value we are being asked for. Okay, the triangle just simplifies our life where we don't have to, especially if you're a learner that's not really, mathematically strong, this triangle it helps you, it helps you. If, for example, you're calculating a person's height, we are calculating the height. Therefore, it will be weight divided by BMI. Then you need to remember, do the extra step of square rooting, because you're not solving for height squared. Okay, if you have to calculate a person's weight, it's BMI multiplied by height squared. All right, so I hope you enjoyed this introductory video, ladies and gentlemen. In the next video tutorial, which is going to come today, okay, please watch. We're going to be working with this, a graph. What type of a graph is that? Okay, to help us calculate BMI, determine the person's weight status, and so on and so forth. Please make sure you watch the video tutorial. That is it, guys, and I'll see you guys on my next upload, Distance Learning with Lee, where I make learning mathematics super easy. Bye, guys.